Hi, everyone. It's the Catholic CEO, Henry Kutarna. Welcome to this exemplary Catholic Leaders series. Today, my special guests are Travis and Rigel. Rigel Raju and Travis Callaway. These fellows are running a podcast called Coffee, Commerce, and Catechesis. Really interesting. And I'm happy that you gentlemen are here today. How's it going today?
It's going great.
Terrific. Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much
having
for
us,
having
Henry.
us.
That's great. Well, it's that was in perfect unison, to perfect harmony. That was great.
We
So,
practiced it.
well, the idea of your podcast, Coffee, Commerce, and Catechesis, the title itself says something. So let's get to know you first, very briefly. How about Rigel? We start with you. What's your story about the faith, and who are you, and where did you come from, and how's the faith going? We'll hit Travis with this in a second here, but let's go to Rigel first on that question.
Sure. So I was born in India, but grew up mostly in Thailand. I'm a cradle Catholic. I come from the south of India, where a lot of people are Christian. I was raised to do all the right things with no real idea or appreciation for why. And I realized looking back, that part was and is very important to me. Kind of strayed from the faith, but not entirely during university. Partied and did all the things that one shouldn't do, but still went to church, went to confession. And that was honestly all God's grace. I was doing all the wrong things. I think my conversion really happened during my year with my parents after I finished that degree. When I was going to church once or even twice a day, started serving as a lector, being more involved in the mass. I was doing really well in school back when I was a kid, and so I've kind of been through the ups and the downs because I did horribly in my degree. And so what I kind of saw through that journey is what's possible with God and how bad it can get without Him. And so as I moved forward, I decided to make all my decisions, accompanying God and making sure that He's on the journey with me. And honestly, Travis's journey, which he'll share, actually helped me in my own formation because coming from a background that wasn't Catholic, it helped me to understand why people actively choose Catholicism over another denomination. That helped me to understand the why, which was really important to me.
This is great, and we were all nodding in unison there when you talked about how we often do things. We stray, we go here and there, and we don't always stick with it. So, and I'll get to Travis just in a second, but you reminded me, Rigel, of something, which is that well, first of all, there's a friendship between the two of you. You've got some kind of a bond, and I think we should talk about that too, because to join forces on something like this is very important. And I love it because I come from a family business, and of course, at the Catholic CEO, we have a little team of people as well that I'm very close to, and so that's important. But let's go, Travis, to you on this question of the faith and where you came from. And I'm going to throw in a question here that applies to both of you. Some people come to the faith through the intellectual approach. They read their way into it, you might say, and then some people get knocked off their horse. And I was just wondering if you, Travis, tell us about your faith journey and keeping that little parallel in mind there.
Yeah, thank you. I'd say my for the anyone that's listened to our little podcast, I've told the story really openly. I was born and raised in a Baptist household, a very Catholic loathing household, I would say. So I grew up hearing all the wrong things about the Catholic faith, believing most of them. But then when I entered university and shortly thereafter, I completely abandoned entirely any semblance of Christianity and spent the majority of my adult life as a cultural Christian at best, and really just a hedonistic, consumeristic, pagan almost, claiming Christianity when it was convenient, but living my life entirely different. And then a number of years ago, it was gradual at first and then happened rapidly. I had a conversion first generally to the Christian faith, again found my way to the Anglican church, and ultimately about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now, largely through conversations with Rigel and other people that I grew to know and love, I found my way falling apart in terms of what I thought Catholicism was and rebuilding it in terms of what it actually is. And that part of that was, to your question about whether it was intellectual or not, mine has been completely intellectual. I'm a student at the University of Toronto doing a master's degree in theology. I do all of my classes that I can through St. Augustine Seminary, and literally it was sort of a step-by-step appreciation for what is the truth and where does that lead us when we follow it. And ultimately it led me to the last place in the world I thought it would lead me and yet did, which is the door of the Catholic Church.
It's so amazing to hear that, the intellectual approach, and the search for truth. And if you honesty, a good priest friend of mine has always said to us, if you're willing to speak or seek and speak the truth, you will find it, and it will lead you, like you just said, where someplace where you'll be completely shocked and surprised, perhaps. So that's very interesting. Maybe tell us about your family's situation, Rigel. How about we start with you? Are you married? What's going on here?
I am married. We've been married for 2 years now. My wife and I met kind of in 2018, kind of lost touch, and then touched base again in 2020. And then that's when we started dating and then got married very soon after that. And we are now expecting our first child. And it's a girl. She'll be born in October. Super excited about it.
That's great. Well, God bless you guys. And
Thank you.
Travis, what about you?
Yeah, so my journey is messier than Rigel's, as is always the case. We keep coming back to this. I was married in a non-Christian ceremony, non-sacramental marriage at all. That marriage completely fell apart, and but thanks be to God, years after that, I met my now wife, and we have come to the Catholic Church together, which is shocking in some ways because my wife was born and raised in Colombia, in an overwhelmingly Catholic country, at least culturally so, but she was raised Seventh-day Adventist. And they have even less time for the Catholics than the Baptists do, which is the household I was raised in. And so my wife and I together have gone through the process. I sought an annulment of my first non-sacramental marriage. Long process. We lived together as brother and sister, celibate for a year as newlyweds after we'd come into the understanding of what the church's teachings are. And just recently, we've been welcomed fully into the church, took part in the sacraments together. And literally the day after we were welcomed into the church, Rigel was there at my wife's baptism and our confirmation and first Eucharist. We flew to Rome and went to Mass at St. Peter's Basilica about a day later, which is about as intense a way to come into the church as possible. And pretty much immediately, it was probably the first day, thanks be to God, my wife got pregnant, and we are now expecting our first child as well, a couple months behind Rigel, but also super excited for this next step in our journey.
Oh no, God bless you as well. This is great. Well, and the mercy, like God is merciful to us. We all do our, you know, we write with He makes it straight with crooked lines, and that expression. So it's good to
Yeah.
hear these things. Let's turn for a moment then to what you guys are doing. So you're friends, and there's a deep bond I can see between you and hopefully in the future with your families and the kids, and that sort of thing as they come along. But coffee, commerce, and catechesis, where did that come from, and what is that all about? What are you doing?
Travis, I'll let you start off and I'll
Sure,
add things along the
we'll
way.
mix it up here. Travis, you start. Sure.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, Rigel and I are both business guys, finance guys. We actually work together. I hired Rigel. Years ago, I spent a very long time working as a private equity and venture capital investor in a family office, working for an ultra high net worth individual. I hired Rigel to join my team. And through that, we developed a bond, a friendship, largely centered in our faith. I was calling myself a Christian, but not being one. He was a practicing Catholic. And then through time and conversations together, we started to grow in our faith and work together. I left that circumstance a little over a year ago under controversial circumstances tied to my faith. I drew a line in the sand over moral issues and left employment. Didn't know what I was going to do next. Had no idea. It was terrifying. But part of that and what has happened over the last year is a realization that I'm either serious about what I profess to believe or I'm not. And I know myself. I know if I'm not serious about it, I go down all the wrong paths. And so I wanted to be overt about my faith. I wanted to combine it with the work that I do. And the work that I do is in the world of business. And so Rigel and I started talking about maybe there's a way for us to share our story, have interesting conversations at the intersect of secular culture, largely from the perspective of work, and the Christian faith, specifically through the lens of the Catholic Church. And so that's from my view what led us to Coffee, Commerce, and Catechesis. Rigel, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think part of it for me as well was just the fact that we were reflecting, like Travis and I would go for walks every day when we were working together at the family office, and we would chat about all these issues that we're dealing with, even at work. And so we just realized that if we really want to live out our faith, we are going to face obstacles in the real world, especially in professional life. In finance, as an example, the money's not ours to manage, and so we can be told to do things that are contradictory to what we believe. And so we assumed that other people would have these struggles, and they're battling with these things as well. part of the podcast was to make sure they don't feel alone. They realize that other people are dealing with this too. And so, hopefully the podcast kind of accompanies them on their journey and gives them some guidance and stuff. We decided that even if one person listens to every episode, we will keep doing it. We're not, this is a passion project for us, and we'll keep doing it no matter what.
This is great. You're both talking about something that is quite, I could say, familiar to me. At the Catholic CO, we've been at it for about 3 or almost 4 years now. We started at the height of the pandemic, and after a lifetime of consulting work that I had done, I found that a lot of people came to me and said, is this all there is? Like, what's the point? I have all the toys, I have all the whatever, I have the money, but I'm empty inside. And not everybody came to tell me that, but a few did. And I used to run peer groups as well. So here's the question for you both. You're business guys, you're a family office. I'm an angel investor too. I get completely what you're doing. And I come from a family business. I love it all. But have you paid a price? Young people come to me, even middle or later stage career people come to me. It's a woke culture. They're working for corporate Canada, corporate America, and they're being asked to do stuff. They're going to go to this thing on Saturday, wear that shirt, and put that deco on your desk, and so on and so on. Have you guys paid a price? And what are the risks for you from your perspective, young men starting families now?
I'll speak to that first, and I won't share the whole story because it's long and messy. But absolutely, yes, there's been a price. I'd say a heavy price. Not only have I lost long-term personal friendships over adhering to the teachings of the church on issues, the woke ones. We could rattle off a bunch. I don't need to. Anyone listening will know what we're talking about. But it was in that family office environment a year ago that I made a public stand about the month of the year that I won't celebrate openly because it contradicts the church's teachings. And I'm a committed Christian. I was not a Catholic at the time. I hadn't been welcomed into the church, but I was living in accordance with the Catholic faith. And I got canceled, you could say, for lack of a better term. I got canceled professionally. It was ultimately me. I made the decision to leave employment because I refuse, in a country where my religious freedoms and the right to express those freedoms or the right to express those views is protected. It's enshrined in our Constitution. It's the first thing enshrined. I refuse to allow myself to be canceled. And if the employer was going to cancel me, I said, okay, well then I have a choice to make, and I don't want to work in this environment. But that was a heavy cost. It was lucrative work. I was good at it. I'd done it for a long time, and leaving caused a lot of stress personally, and I lost a lot of friendships along the way, unfortunately. But I look back now and it was absolutely worth it. I would do it again in a heartbeat. It didn't necessarily feel that way at the time, but yes, to answer the question, definitely there has been a high personal cost. And thanks be to God, my wife has been along by my side during it. And I don't know how I would have done it without her.
That's a fantastic story. Rigel, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think my story is a little bit different. So Travis is probably the person that in terms of a professional standard, he's the person that I would hold myself comparable to. But, I have to come to terms with the reality of the fact that Travis has far more years of experience and stuff than I do. We're very much on the same page when it comes to the faith. And so when we were deciding about launching this podcast, I was terrified because it can ruin career prospects and things like that. And so I have to be very real about that. But looking back now, if any doors have been closed, I don't know about it. But I do know that doors have been opened. And that's just the way things have been presented to me. And I consider that God's grace, honestly. I'm hoping that this is his way of motivating me to continue doing what we're doing. I just haven't seen any downside to it. And there may be some downsides. I may be applying to jobs and get rejected because, because of what I'm posting on LinkedIn, for example. But I've realized now that if doors are closing, those are doors that I don't want open anyway. And the doors that have been opened seem far more compelling. And so I'm very happy where I am.
This is great to hear. So many of the people that come to us at the Catholic CEO are telling me the same story. Young men, in particular, starting families, raising children, realizing that they have to inevitably leave that corporate culture. They have to leave it. And what are their options? Can they go somewhere else? And so I'm going to ask you both that, I'm going to ask for your advice in a second to young people, but I'll mention that they're looking around, and some of them are saying, okay, let's start a business. And that's a challenge for them because they may not have the skill set or the knowledge. And of course, that's why we're here. That's what we do. We help people with. But, what would you both say then to your peers around the Western world, let's say Europe, Canada, US? What would you say to them when they realize inevitably they're going to have to leave? How do they prepare? Did you guys prepare? Did you do it cold turkey? Kind of, Travis, it sounded like you were sort of cold turkey about it. Rigel, I'm not quite sure exactly whether it was a smooth, sudden decision. What's your advice to the young person who sees the reality and knows that to stay faithful, you're going to have to leave that environment?
I'll speak to that first. Yeah, for me it was cold turkey, and I'm so glad it was because I'm really good at mental gymnastics, and so I'm pretty clever when I want to be, and so I can talk myself into rationalizing all sorts of things that I ought not to be rationalizing, especially when it comes to what makes me comfortable financially. And so for me, I'm really glad that things came to a head for me and forced me to make a decision. It was a light switch. It was, you're in or you're out. It's black or white. I'm really grateful for that because if not, I probably could have stayed in an environment I shouldn't have been in anyways, compromising myself, calling myself a committed Catholic and not doing the things I should probably be doing too long, much longer than I did. So it was, rip off the Band-Aid sort of thing for me. I'm grateful for that. It was scary. It was extremely scary, and I won't pretend it wasn't. But I'm amazed now with the benefit of hindsight and looking back to echo Rigel's comments. So many doors have opened, opportunities I never imagined being an option have been presented to me, and I've been humbled by that, shocked by that at times, and almost all of these things are more consistent with what I want for my life, what I want for the family that my wife and I will hopefully be building here, God willing. And I've been so encouraged by that I wouldn't have it any other way. But I did have to rip that bandage off. And I would say if anyone's listening to this and they're feeling like they're in that circumstance, I know it's scary. I don't know that you can take the fear away. I also don't know that we have any reason from scripture and the teachings of the church to believe that there won't be really, really hard decisions to be made in life. And if we're going to follow Christ, we have to pick up our cross and do so. And that could mean doing the kinds of things that I did. And I'll probably have to do it again and probably many more times in my life.
Got it. Got it. Rigel.
Yeah, I think for me the transition was a bit slower, but looking back, honestly, like I stayed at the family office for a few months longer than Travis did. Looking back, that's a period of shame for me because I know exactly where they stood in terms of those moral issues and the fact that my religious freedom was not accepted there. Travis is the one who provided me a way out, and that was God's doing as well. I had finally had it, and I messaged Travis saying, "Hey, are you guys hiring?" They had just hired someone, and I was on a walk with my sister, just ranting and venting about how I'm so done. By the end of the walk, I checked my phone, and Travis has messaged me back saying that, "Hey, that something just fell through with that candidate. Are you still looking?" And I was like, "This is the sign." So I just called it, resigned that very day, and made the switch. So yeah, thanks be to God for that. In terms of advice, I would say, yeah, there's tough decisions to be made every day. I would say it's necessary to practice some prudence, especially when we have bills to pay and stuff. But at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, what is the most important thing in this life? Is your career everything? Is your profession everything? I mean, you can be the CEO of a company and not feel fulfilled, but you put priority in Christ, make him a priority, let him fill your life, and you won't need anything else. So I would say be courageous, but be prudent. Have faith, but be smart.
It's a great advice. Let's go even a little deeper on the advice. You know, First of all, tell me who your audience is in your podcast, but what would you tell them and the Catholic CEO audience? What are some tools? Maybe a couple of quick ideas. How do you prepare? Whether you go cold turkey or you think deliberately and you're going to be prudent, all these wonderful things you said. But what are some tools on how to prep? Let's say you've got two children, you're, 5 years married, and the reality is hitting you. So but talk about your audience for a moment too, and what would you say to them or to our audience?
Do you want to go first, Travis?
Sure. Yeah, I'll take a shot at it. So our audience is a bit of a mix. Catholics, non-Catholic Christians, and then people that are non-believers whatsoever, even people from other faith traditions. We've had people reach out to us who are Muslims, Hindus, saying that they're listening and they're interested in learning more and stuff. So we have a mixed bag of audience members, but most of the time what we're talking about is things that are of some measure of importance to anyone who is living in the secular world and feeling like there's something amiss. And obviously for us, what helps us figure out what is amiss is the teachings of the church and trying to be committed Christians following the example of our Lord and Savior. And so we talk about all sorts of things that would be of relevance to anyone who's seeing what's going on in our culture, whether it's, progressivism and wokeism and all these things and what they're telling us are goods and just doesn't feel right about it. The stuff that we talk about will resonate with those people. I'd say. Rigel, would you add to that?
Yeah, I would say it's tough because our audience is so mixed. Every episode is not going to cater to everyone, and so people will pick and choose what they listen to. But I think the most compelling thing for us has been that people have been messaging us nonstop and saying that, it's making some kind of a difference in their life, whether it's a single episode or all the episodes combined, and that's been a huge blessing for us.
That's
And in
great.
terms of the advice, in terms of anyone who's listening, I sympathize and empathize with the concerns that people would have about making hard decisions. Trust me, I've been there. I've had these difficult conversations. I've had to tell family members, like literal blood relationships, the people that I've known from the day I was born, that I'm not crazy, that I'm not committing career suicide, that God will provide a path, and that has been incredibly hard. And so if anyone's going through anything close to that, my heart breaks for you because I know how hard it is, but God is good and he does provide a path. And so I'd say, practically speaking, two things that looking back now, I wish I'd done sooner. And I'm so glad I did eventually. One, spend time with, probably starting in your parish, spend time with other good men who are doing something else in the world of business. Maybe they're entrepreneurs themselves, maybe they're lawyers, maybe they're bankers, whatever it is. They too will be wrestling with some of the same things as you are. And you can at least learn from them. And you never know, there might be an opportunity once you're talking to them to partner up in some capacity. So I'd say that's something I wish I'd done sooner, and I'm glad I have done. And secondly, I would say focus on, in the moments, if you are in the workplace and it's hostile and you're seeing all the stuff that's being forced upon everybody, take time, maybe multiple times a day, but at least once per day, and center yourself, pray, find time for silence, be with God. And even in the midst of it, keep doing that, because if you don't, if my experience is any indication, it's too easy to then drift further and further and further towards the stuff that our world is throwing at us and further away from Christ. And so find time each day, even in the midst of it that you're trying to get out of it, to focus on God, talk to him, even in the middle of the day.
Yeah, I would say my first bit of advice is prayer. There's nothing that we or our friends or our family or our connections can do that God can't. So make him, like, put him first. Talk to him in prayer, express your concerns, tell him what you're trying to do or what you're afraid of. Leave it all in God's hands. That's the first step. And then second step, I would echo Travis's sentiments, is find community. Talking to your parish members, yes, but talk to your priests even. Say, this is what's happening at work and it's bothering me. I want to work for a Catholic where I don't have to compromise my values. They will know people just because of the nature of their position. Read articles on, Catholic media outlets and message people, comment on their work. And, they might be able to put you in touch with someone who they know, because of the nature of their work, who is looking to hire someone with exactly your skills. You don't know what doors it'll open. And one piece of advice I want to leave with people is that if you share our values, you are the silent majority. We have learned this with our podcast. And you should know that there are people who believe exactly the same things you do. They're just not outspoken about it. So reach out to the people who are outspoken about it, and they will probably know people who are the exact kind of people that you need.
Yeah, you're really, it's a message of hope, in the sense that I'm going to conclude from what you're saying that, it's not career suicide to hold these values. At the human level, at the worldly level, maybe it seems that way, but who wants to go down that wrong path anyway, right? And so to have that community, that focus on the brothers and the brotherhood, and just, a network of people, whether it's family or business associates or your parish. And I love the idea of the parish, because we have a project called the Catholic Economy, And that's exactly what we're talking about. We're saying in the parish level, let's have advisors to young people starting a business. Let's have capital. Let's even have some grants, where a bunch of people put money together, So you're giving me the signal here that it's a positive thing. So this is great. I would like to ask maybe one more question before we wrap up. Uh, where's the coffee commerce and catechesis headed? What's going on in the next year? Let's say, what do you see over the horizon? What kind of topics? What kind of questions? What events? That sort of thing.
Yeah, we were super, super, super humble in the very beginning. And so we were asking just friends, like, will you be a guest on the podcast? People don't just want to listen to Rigel and I will get sick of us. So, would you come and talk to us? And I've been humbled. Humbled isn't even strong enough a word, it seems, to reflect the number of people that have reached out to us wanting to talk to us about certain things, just because we have this dinky little platform that is reaching people that we never suspected it would reach. And so in the months ahead, we have awesome guests who are some of them are somewhat media celebrities themselves in the Catholic world, who have agreed to come and chat with us about all sorts of things, whether it be cancel culture, death on demand, the euthanasia movement, all sorts of these issues. And Rigel and I, for better or for worse, are not afraid to have these conversations, because I think they're conversations that Catholics specifically want to be having, or at least knowing that they're not the only ones thinking about it. And so that's what the future of the podcast hopefully holds is we're laymen, we're not priests, we're not theologians, we're not experts in this stuff, but we do want to talk about things that we worry about, that our friends worry about, that our families worry about. And we've thankfully got a lot of people that are way smarter than we are, who have platforms that we don't have, but want to come and chat with us about some of these things.
Great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I would just add to that, we had we'd set low expectations for ourselves when we started the podcast. What we wanted to do was just take this idea that we had and put it into play. Now that we have started, we're looking to make incremental improvements. We're looking to improve our audio quality and video quality and production value and stuff. But we're also looking to do something out of this. And so we are considering, and we've talked about starting a business founded in our faith. And so, with having business backgrounds ourselves, we are thinking of, not dissimilar from you, Henry, having a consulting business that advises businesses, maybe run by Catholics, maybe they're explicitly Catholic businesses, helping them to grow and scale and do all the things that a business wants to do, but without compromising our values in any way. And that's important to us, and that'll hopefully be a next step. In addition to hopefully hosting some in-person events and stuff and building sort of a community around the podcast, that would be awesome.
Yeah, that's great. No, I can see a bright future. The last thing I'll say before I ask you for where do we find you is, it's an observation. In the world of Catholic business owners, they're looking for capital, as you know, and they're looking for capital from Catholic sources. And so, I just put that seed in fact, I've got two referrals I'm going to send you. I already just thought of these two people in your city that I'm going to send to you that need capital, and they want, though, ethical, and not just the standard definition of ethical, but they want funds run by Catholics who understand the Catholic faith. So it's a great topic. And so where do we find you? What are your websites and your socials and all that stuff? If you could give us that summary, please.
Yeah, our website is cofcomcat.com, which is just COFCOMCAT.com. You can find most of our information there. All our episodes and blogs and stuff are on there. Our email is simply cofcomcat@gmail.com. And if you contact us either of those two ways, you'll reach us anyhow.
That's great. That's great. Well, last word to you guys. Give us a sentence from each of you on, what's your what would be your closing comment? What should we do in this world and in this culture? Let's start with Rigel, and then we'll close with Travis.
Yeah, I'm just gonna requote Matt Fradd here. I would say get married young and have more kids than you think you can afford. That's what we should do.
I love it. That's exactly right. Travis.
Well, he stole Matt Fradd, I introduced him to Matt Fradd, so like I take issue with him claiming that, but it's a great quote. I would agree with that, and I would add that God is good, His plan is good. Trust Him no matter what.
That's great. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for being with us today. It's been wonderful, and Godspeed, and God bless you guys in your families and in your business. And I hope to talk to you again. And
Thanks for having us, Henry.
thanks again. See you later.
God bless.
Thank you.